James Fenimore Cooper was born in 1789. He's known as one of the most influential writers of the 19th century and the first American novelist. He lived most of his childhood in Cooperstown, New York, a town his father had established. His father was the patriarch, the judge of Otsego County, which is where the town was, and was the district's representative to Congress. He was also the landlord there. Cooper lived most of his life in Cooperstown, but when he went off to Yale University for 3 years, he was expelled. It's believed that he was expelled because he blew up another student's door. When he returned, his father put him in the military for disciplinary reasons. In 1809, he left the military because of his father's death by a gunshot wound. He came back and inherited his father's estate as well as did his siblings. He inherited $50,000 and married Susan DeLancey, who also came from a wealthy family. They had five children, 4 daughters and 1 son. Cooper had many jobs before he was a literary artist. Those jobs included campaigning for the Federalist Party, being a secretary for agricultural and biblical societies, but none of them really had stable work for him. So in 1820, Cooper wrote his first novel called Precautions. He wrote this novel to prove to his wife that he could write a better novel than the British. His novel was not critically well received, and he published it by himself anonymously. Many thought it was a British woman that had written the novel, as it was a romantic novel and he had based it off of Jane Austen's writings. His second novel, The Spy, was a critical success, but almost was not completed because of the reviews and the success and the lack of success in this first novel. But by the persuasion of his family and friends, he was able to complete the novel. Over the next 30 years, Cooper was able to write 32 more novels, as well as some other books, whether they were political or about the military. One of his greatest works is known as the Leatherstocking novels, which is 5 books that started with The Pioneers, which was his third novel, and also includes The Last of the Mohicans, which is one of his most critically acclaimed novels. In 1828, he wrote his first non-fiction novel, or book, entitled The Notions of the Americans, which followed the American society and greatness of American societies, even though it was looked down on by the European societies. In the 1830s, though, he stayed 7 years in Europe, and in the 1830s, he wrote many books, or 3 books that were looking at the European aristocracy, and they were written against the European government. But when he returned to America, many saw his novels as boring, or his books as boring, and wanted the other fictional novels that he had written before. Others thought he had become more accustomed to European government, and so they also he felt were against him. And from the time of 1833 to 1838, it seemed that Cooper was being abandoned. He was not able to make the money that he used to from his fictional novels with his new, more politically focused novels. He returned to Cooperstown later on and lived the rest of his life there, after spending 7 months in New York, in a different place in New York. During this time, Cooper had felt so betrayed by Americans that he rarely left his home. Many lawsuits were filed by Cooper against the press because he felt that they were trying to slander his name and make him look bad. In 1848, he began to study the Bible and became an active Christian in the Episcopalian Church. From then on, most of his writings had more biblically and religious themes surrounding them. In 1850, he wrote his last novel, The Ways of the Hour. It examined contemporary society and revolved around a murder trial plot, and it was his last novel, as well as his last fictional novel. In 1851, Cooper died just before his 62nd birthday. And while many critics were very negative when talking about him while he was alive, they only focused on the remarkable works and literary success that he had as a writer after his death. Since Cooper was born so early in America's time, not many Americans thought that they could succeed through writing. And many left that up to the British to do. With Cooper being a risk taker and writing this novel, he was able to establish hope for other Americans that they could live their dreams as painters, artists, and writers, and other kinds of art forms that they did not think would be possible before. He inspired such famous writers as Herman Melville. He also was part of the reason why many publishers began to take on American artists. He was the founder of the Bread and Cheese Club, which was a society for writers and painters and professionals of all kinds. And part of the reason Cooper's significant today is because of his literature that began new forms of American literature, such as the Western, the Revolutionary Tale, and the Sea Tale. Some of his works that are focused on these forms is The Pilot and The Sea Lines. And his most famous writings, The Leatherstockings, were 5 novels, including Last of the Mohicans and The Pioneers, and they were able to create what is known as the myth of America, which is that America, being founded through conflict and disposition, was able to hold on to the belief of its own innocence in its youth. And also from these novels, he was able to focus on the Native Americans not as savages, but as more complex individuals. He did a great amount of research on the Native Americans, which had not been done before. This brought new light onto the Native Americans and allowed more to be seen from them than just being seen as savage beasts. This is part of the reason why Cooper is so unique. These novels remained influential and heartfelt to many who read them after Cooper's death. It wasn't just in America, but in Europe as well. Many were very taken by his remarkable skills in writing and his ability to make such notable characters such as Natty Bumppo, which was one of the main characters of the Leatherstocking novels. Cooper remains significant also because of his creative ability and activism in his nation. Whether it be as a patriotic citizen or as a Christian, whatever Cooper believed in, he was very active in it. And because of his risk in writing an American novel, we are able to have what we have as American literature today. Had Cooper not written that novel or taken that chance and published his own books, we may not have American literature. And that is part of the reason why Cooper is significant and relevant. Because without him, we may not have American literature as we do today. And we do because of Cooper. And we must thank him for that. We must remember that it's because of Cooper that we have American literature. And we must also remember that even today, over 200 years later, they are still being very influential and still influencing others and giving hope to other American writers and people outside of America that they can take many risks in what they believe in, and they can establish something that could change the world. Thank you.